10 reasons your pickup and delivery operation isn't thriving. That's the message today. That's what we're going to talk about today. We've talked about revenues. We've talked about how to build operations, how to do things the right way. But the truth is, Carla and I, we have a lot of experience in our team here in Cincinnati figuring out what to do wrong. We've done a lot of that stuff. Also coaching a lot of people. We've seen a lot of people do things wrong, been able to turn them around, pivot, improve those things. That's what this episode is about today. So we're going to give you the 10 reasons that your pickup and delivery operations might not be thriving to the level that they could. Let's do it.
Okay, welcome to today's show. Today we're going to be giving a top 10 countdown of reasons we've seen pickup and deliveries not do as well as they should. Our number 10 reason, starting with number 10, is when people don't watch their numbers. And this is one that Dave has been guilty of.
100% guilty. And just so you know, most of these I'm guilty of. It's, do as I say, not as I do or did.
We made a lot of mistakes before we got to a successful pickup and delivery business, which is why we do the coaching and the workshop and everything, is we're trying to help other people avoid those mistakes. But what we mean by not watching their numbers, to tell the little story about us, is early on, Dave was so focused about growing the business and covering the entire greater Cincinnati area, covering the market, adding customers, and we were growing like crazy. We were adding customers like crazy. But what we weren't watching were our costs to get there. There were a lot of places we were delivering to where we were losing money because we were spending so much just getting to that location. And so as I started running the numbers, I basically told Dave, I'm like, hey, we need to talk about this. We need to stop growing before we're broke.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, like, one of the things we'll tell you that you need to do to make sure you're watching your numbers is, first of all, don't watch revenue. Don't watch sales. Don't watch gross volume, whatever you want to call it, pounds of laundry. Those things do not matter. They are vanity metrics. They do not matter other than bragging rights at the clean show or something like that. When a group of people get together and say, I have 30 trucks, I do 8,000 pounds a day, et cetera, et cetera. That's not what matters. Us personally, and we assume most of you are in business for two reasons. One, to solve a problem in the world. That's what us entrepreneurs do, serve our community, and to make a profit. Now, I would rather make $300,000 off of $500,000 in revenue than make $300,000 off of $1 million of revenue. But some people like to go around and say, but I have $1 million pickup and delivery business, or I have 6 trucks. And we were guilty of that at one point. Not really the bragging so much as just wanting to build something big and amazing and solve big problems. And what we learned is that, at least in Cincinnati market and a lot of markets throughout the country, us entrepreneurs, there's nothing wrong with being ambitious, wanting to grow a big business and all those things. Just make sure that we're serving the community and make sure that we're making a profit. If you're running a nonprofit, then have at it. But if you're not, know who you are. One of the worst things that we've seen through coaching, Carla, is seeing a lot of clients that think they're making money and they're not. And so one of the things we recommend you do when it comes to watching your numbers is be very self-reflective. Most laundromat owners got into the laundromat business because they either didn't have a lot of business experience and loved the simplistic business model, or they didn't want to build a big business and they didn't want to have to look at the deep dive numbers. And I would honestly, in a lot of ways, I would say I fell into that first category, especially for the first 10 years or so. And so I built a business that I was proud of. I thought we were making lots of money. And then my analytical math nerd of a wife showed me that we weren't. We were basically losing $20,000 a month at some points. And so we want you to learn from that. Now, the good news is for us, it came from a very good place. We believed that we would scale and we would grow to the point of profitability. It was actually pretty intentional that we were, quote unquote, losing money in the beginning. So that's actually a caveat I want to caution you on is, unless you build scalable operations and you know exactly what that looks like, and maybe you do, because there's a lot more experience out there and information out there in the world today now, than there was 6 years ago when we got into the business. But if you're not sure what that looks like, just make sure that your numbers align. Remember, the top line is fool's gold. And I'll give you a quick example. I have a coaching client from several years ago now. And this coaching client, we were talking about pickup and delivery. And they said, oh, yeah, we do pickup and delivery. Oh, how's it going? Oh, it's going great. We're growing every month. I said, oh, that's great. And I said, let's talk about your profitability. What are your margins? They were like, well, what do you mean by margins? How much profit are you making? They're like, well, I'm not real sure, but we're making pretty good money. So anyway, we pushed pause on that conversation that day, and I said, do me a favor. I said, for our next coaching call, how about you put together your numbers in real world? And let's talk about what those numbers look like. Okay.
And I just want to interject here. I think that's an important thing that people sometimes, when you have a pickup and delivery option and a laundromat, you lump it kind of all together, and maybe
common.
You have great revenue between self-serve and drop-off and delivery, but maybe you're not actually making money on the delivery. It's important, even if you don't completely keep your books separate long-term, at least have some idea of the separate books of what your delivery is doing. I do the accounting side, and we actually have a separate LLC for our pickup and delivery service, so we keep them completely separate. But make sure, too, that you are including all of the costs. Your attendant is, if they're processing your delivery laundry, that doesn't mean it's free. You still have to take part of the cost of that person and apply it to the cost of your delivery. So sorry to interject, but
no. Yeah, and so this person, a very, very smart business person, very successful in a lot of ways, brought their stuff to me, and they basically just brought their delivery expenses, their logistics expenses, and they just treated their operational expenses, meaning what we call laundry processing, management, delegation, and we'll get into some of these things. They were just like, here's what I pay my drivers, here's what my van costs, and my driver's labor cost and my gasoline cost and maintenance, and the rest is profit. So they have subtracted that, subtracted $4,000 from $10,000 in revenue and said, I made $6,000 last month. And needless to say, I poked a hole in that pretty quickly. And long story short, within a 1-hour coaching call, I was able to show them how they were actually losing money. And this is a very smart, successful person who had been doing pickup and delivery for a couple years. And this person was basically just floored.
Yeah, and I will say the separate books, it can be somewhat a little bit of estimating. Obviously, when you're using your own machinery and infrastructure and the utilities, you kind of have to estimate how much of that you want to put towards the delivery. But it's important you still include those costs as a cost of your pickup and delivery. Those processing costs, even if you're using your attendants to process it, part of their cost still needs to go to that. So however many hours they spend on those delivery orders, those hours of cost of their wages should go towards a delivery cost. So some of it can be estimation as far as wear and tear and utilities and stuff on your equipment, but it's important to still include those things.
Yeah, most definitely. There's nothing better than free. Ever heard that before? Well, it's not true. You know what your laundromat customers like even better than free? It's fast. That's right, they want to save time more than they want to save money in most cases. They want to get in and out of your laundromat as fast as possible, and they'll pay more for that experience. We're proof of that here in Cincinnati. That's why we added HM Company drain troughs into our newest store in Cincinnati. While they may never know why, your customers will love that your washers all drain better and faster than with old school drain pipes. As if that wasn't enough, every HM drain trough is made in the USA, so they ship in only a few weeks, and everyone is custom made just for you and your project. If you want to provide your customers with a top of the industry experience in your store, then contact your distributor to order your HM Company drain trough today or visit draintroughs.com. All right, so that was number 10. We're going to jump on to number 9, and we are going to keep these kind of high level so that we can cover more, more topics in a, fairly, hopefully short podcast. Number 9, and if you haven't noticed, we are counting backwards, so we will get to the bigger ones at the end. Number 9 is launching on-demand operations, or what I call Windows-based operations, in a market that can't support those. So let's just once again, kind of high level, let's talk about what that looks like. One of the first things I see pickup and delivery operators do when they decide to launch is they say, oh, I have a store. I have maybe a management team, at least have an attendant. We do drop off laundry. All you got to do is buy the van, go pick up the laundry. And the first thing that they assume, and unfortunately some people are kind of spreading this narrative, is, hey, keep in mind, this is a service-oriented business. This is a logistics business, and people are used to getting service immediately. If they order a cheeseburger, they don't want it on Tuesday. They want it today. If they order a ride to the airport, they want that today. People are used to getting what they want immediately. If they order a package from Amazon, they're used to getting it immediately. And all those things are true. But the caveat to that is, with pickup and delivery laundry, they're not purchasing something other than a service. They're buying back their time, right? And so being on demand isn't as necessary as people think it is. Now, look, if you're in New York City or LA and some of these awesome, humongous markets, you have a store in the middle of the city and you're going to service pickup and delivery within a 4 or 5 mile radius around your store, and there's 800,000 people in 4 mile radius, great, have at it. You can do what I call dink and dunk, and you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trucks, and you can just pink and punk all around town all day long. And you're going to go 2 miles this way and 1 mile that way and 3 miles this way and pick up an order. And on your way back, you're going to pick up another. And that will always be profitable for you. So that's one way to do it. And if you're in one of the top 5, 7, 8, 10 markets in the country, you can do that, especially if you keep your service area contained. Another side of it is you can do the same thing if you're in really any market in the country, as long as you only service a small area around your store. Usually it's 2, 3, 4 miles. What I tell people when it comes to on-demand is that when you launch pickup and delivery, one of the first things logistically you have to decide is what area are you going to service, and then build a business model around that area. Now, most people in most markets, if they were to just service 3, 4, 5 miles around their store, that's going to be a few thousand people.
It's going to be a small pickup business.
Yeah. I mean, maybe 10,000, 15, 20,000, something like that. And that we would probably fall in that category, even though we're in what most people consider to be a major market in Cincinnati, or at least a mid-major market. But what we really want to point out to you is we're not haters of on-demand. We're not haters of the window-based operations. We just see so many people doing it wrong. And what do we mean by wrong is they're falsely assuming that this is what you have to do to be successful. Our customers, and they may not know this, by the way, but our customers, they are not focused on how quickly we pick up their laundry. They're focused on, once we pick it up, how quickly we return their laundry. Does that make sense, Carla? Any questions?
Yeah, kind of how I think of this too. Dave often says how pickup and delivery is a trust business. People are trusting you with their clothes. This truck comes and picks them up and delivers them back. And a lot of times they don't even see a face. Their clothes, which sometimes is a lot of money they spend on clothes, are in the care of this person or this company that they never actually see. Yes. So I think that kind of ties to, people don't care as much about how soon can you get there, but how long are you going to have my clothes? Because that's longer I have to trust you. They more want to know, when is it going to be back to me? Because a lot of times we need our clothes, maybe we need it for some upcoming event or whatever. It's more important to me to know when my clothes are going to be back clean rather than how soon you pick them up. And I see a lot of on-demand services, and then they're kind of vague on when they're going to get it back to you. Like, it should be back to you within 2 to 3 days or whatever. We stick with next day delivery, and I think that's what a lot of people like. And it's totally doable with the third shift processing. But
it is.
Anyway. Absolutely.
So I hope that makes sense to you. We're not here to hate on demand or anything like that. We just want you to know the parameters of what that looks like, and the size of your market does matter. So there's let's be clear. There's plenty of people that use on-demand operations for laundry pickup and delivery very successfully and even very scalable. Because once again, it depends on the market that you're going to serve and the market that you're in.
I would look at the size of your area, because if you get into a larger area, like we cover many miles, you just can't be efficient with your drivers, and you end up with outrageous costs, the expense of driving back and forth. So anyway, all right. So now down to number 8. Number 8 is not giving yourself enough runway, trying to make that easy money.
Absolutely. We like to break this down into 3 components, okay? When it comes to pickup and delivery, there is the launch phase, there's the scaling phase, and then there's the optimizing phase, Okay. So let's start with step one. When you launch, that is not difficult to do, especially because most people, when they launch pickup and delivery, they have no customers, right? And so they don't expect to make money.
Your logistics are simple. You're probably, or either you or your manager is driving your personal vehicle with maybe a magnet stuck on it.
Yep, absolutely. A lot of times people use personal vehicles and things like that. And there's a right and a wrong way to do launch, and we're not going to get into that today. But the point is that there's the launch aspect. Then there's the scale aspect, okay? Now, what I call the scale aspect is you can scale quickly. If you want to scale quickly, efficiently, and profitably, you have to be intentional about scaling. And what I've seen across the industry pretty collectively, and once again, guilty as charged to a certain extent, is I was intentional about it, but not intentional enough. So most people, and we didn't do this, most people launch and they say, I want to, I'm launching pickup and delivery. I have one van. I want to make money. Like, I'm doing this if I want to make a couple $1,000s as quick as I can. And that's not honestly hard to do. So if that's the launch and the stopping point, then that's fine. That's not hard to do. You can probably even stop listening now. That's not hard to do. What most people do is they launch, and I usually call it anywhere from an 8 to a 16-month window from launching pickup and delivery. And what they do is they do what works. And because everything's very simple and easy, it doesn't need to be scalable. The logistics, the routes, if you have them, or the ability to be on demand or whatever, using your personal vehicle, driving personally for the van, not valuing your time, things like that, they all work in the beginning. And what happens is, I've seen it happen hundreds of times, is operators fall into this comfortable complacency. And I talk to people that have done pickup and delivery for a year or two, and they say all the time, yeah, I mean, we've been doing it for pickup and delivery for a year or two now. We kind of have that all figured out. And the mistake they're making, which I sort of made, the mistake they're making is they're assuming what worked the first year in the launch phase will work in phase 2, which is the scale phase. Okay. And the reality is most of the time it won't. What works in a small setting will not typically scale. And I'll give you a quick example of that. A driver goes out, maybe it's Dave, right? Get in the van, go drive the laundry. So no logistics cost, right? Most people don't account for their personal time. There's that aspect. Then I bring 5 orders back to the store. I hand them over to my attendant, my store manager if I have one. They process the laundry. I come back in the next morning, throw those 5 orders on a van, and go drop them back off. There's no labor cost because the people that were already on payroll are processing the laundry. I call that free labor. There's no logistical cost because I'm not valuing my time. But what happens when you get to the point of you outgrow those people? You outgrow your time or what you're willing to contribute for free. You run out of your free labor and you run out of their free labor. And that's where we really hit a stepping stone, is when I said, okay, we need to hire a part-time driver and then I'll be a backup. And then we need to hire a second driver and a third driver, and now we need another truck. And now we need to, instead of just having the attendant or the store manager do the laundry, now we have 15 or 20 orders. We need to hire a couple processors. Well, that's taking 100% of their expenses and adding them onto the payroll. Economically, what this looks like is you launch, you make a little bit of money. Then you move into scale without knowing it, without being intentional about it, and you can't scale. I have seen it happen in Cincinnati alone. In the 6 years we've been doing pickup and delivery, we've probably had anywhere from 15 to 20, maybe more, competitors launch pickup and delivery in this market. And almost 100, I'd say there's probably 2 exceptions, almost 100% of the time, within 18 to 24 months, they just disappear. A few of them we've bought, and we bought their customer list, and it was great for us. And they went on with their lives to do whatever they do for a living. But the reason is because they didn't know it was launch, scale, optimize. Now,
basically, their businesses grew to a point where they needed to spend more money. And if they were going to spend more money, they wouldn't have any profit.
Correct.
And so they ended up being like, why am I doing this? I'm not making any money.
Yeah, that's right. And then they just throw their hands up. They can't figure it out. And these are the same people, by the way, and they're very smart business owners typically. So I'm not talking down about them. But typically, these are the people that now, after the industry's been doing pickup and delivery in some capacity for decades, but pretty seriously for the last 5 to 10 years. These are the people going around the industry now that launch pickup and delivery. They couldn't figure out, they made a little money in the beginning. They couldn't figure out how to scale and make money. They banged their head against the wall. They threw their hands up, sold their truck, and now they go all across the industry and on Facebook groups and things like this, and they say the same narrative.
No one can make money doing pickup and delivery.
Nope. It seems like it. It seems like it's not that hard, but I'm telling you, I've done it. There's no money in it. Mm-hmm. Well, what do I always say about people that haven't figured out how to do something yet? That's their reality, right? Their reality is that it can't be done when what they mean is they couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with them accepting the fact that I couldn't figure it out. Most of us have pride, and we don't want to admit that if we had kept going, or if we had attended a workshop or hired a coach, or maybe just kept grinding like we did for several years and losing money and pivoting and changing the processes and changing compensation schedules and raising prices and things like that, that there is a path to profitability. So part of the reason we're doing this episode is if you're stuck in this scalable path and you're not sure how to scale, it can be done, but you may need coaching or a workshop or to go to, conferences and things like that where you're going to pick up tips. You just have to keep pivoting every aspect of your business until you figure out that model. The last one is optimizing your business. Okay. Optimizing your business is something that should never, ever stop. We're still doing it to this day. And all that is continuously looking for those micro improvements. Tweaks. And I tell people all the time, people talk about our workshop car and they say, oh, it's $4,000 to come to this workshop. That's a lot of money. And I talk to these same people and I say, okay, you have a $400,000 pickup and delivery business that's very profitable. You're making 25% profits. What if you spent $4,000, came to this workshop, 90% of what we showed you, you completely ignored and didn't listen to because you figured out your own path and that's fine. But what if that other 10% we helped you? It's those golden nuggets, those micro improvements that we're always looking for, should be always looking for in our business. Well, I'm not a math genius, but 10% of $400,000, it's $40,000. And so they're going to get a 10x return on that workshop in 1 year, not to mention in the future and not to mention if they grow their business and things like that. So really how we break down like our workshop, our coaching, but really we want to break it down for you in this episode is we want you to understand the 3 phases, understand how different they are, and by far, the middle one is the most difficult. That weeds out 99% of people who launch pickup and delivery. Now, bringing it full circle back to the runway, if you're going to build what we call a scalable, uncompetable pickup and delivery business in your market, meaning you're going to scale and you're going to dominate your market, that scale phase, that middle phase, is typically going to be anywhere from 12 to 36 months. And you can plan on losing money or breaking even for the majority of that. Now, it doesn't have to be that way because, the CLA puts on workshops, which will help you. And we have our workshop and people do coaching and different things like that. It doesn't have to be that way. But if you're going to go through the school of hard knocks, that's what it's going to look like. Really what we want this to do is just kind of open your eyes, because if you're in that launch phase, you've entered into that scale phase and you're not sure what it looks like, you may be listening to this getting ready to give up on a $400,000 business. And so we don't want that.
We've seen people do it.
Yeah.
All right. So number 7, this is one I see a lot, is not maintaining control of the supply chain. Yeah. As I talked about before, and Dave mentions all the time, laundry pickup and delivery is a trust business. A lot of times people don't have a face, they don't see a person, they don't even know where their clothes go, and then they come back clean. Any part of the supply chain that you're not controlling is an opportunity for it to fail, and you can't control that. So I mean from pickup. So are you using your own drivers, your own vehicle, making sure that gets picked up correctly? Or are you using, DoorDash or Uber or hiring somebody? The processing, are you paying another laundromat to process it for you? Or are you in-house having your own processors that you hire and that you train process that laundry? And then finally, going to delivery, is it your driver making sure that it arrives on time and placed where it's supposed to be placed? And that's really the supply chain, but I like to also include things like customer service.
Yep.
How are you going to feel? That's huge. I see this all the time where I was just looking at a competitor that started up in Cincinnati recently, and they had on their website, if you have any issues with your laundry, here is a chat bot you can talk to. If someone has my laundry, I want a person. I don't want a chat bot if my laundry doesn't show up or comes back stained or, whatever. So it's really keeping control of that entire supply chain so that you can make sure you can be trusted. You are maintaining that trust with that customer and also creating a consistent product. Consistency is huge.
If we have learned anything through the last few years of COVID, this is being shot in late 2022. If we've learned anything, it's how important and powerful controlling the supply chain is for really any business. Now, look, if you're going to become Amazon and Google and blah, 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 you're probably not going to control 100% of the supply chain, or there may be economics where it makes sense to farm out labor overseas or whatever. We are a small business. That's what we are. We are small, service-oriented, local, sub-market specific business. We can control the supply chain. But let me throw a disclaimer out there just so everybody knows. I know people that farm out different aspects of the supply chain, and they do it very, very well. And I'll give you a quick example because we actually do that with dry cleaning.
We do.
Okay. We don't have a dry cleaning plant. We have an awesome dry cleaner that gives us very fair rates. We are very aligned in our mission and how we treat customers. It's a very symbiotic relationship that's beautiful for them and beautiful for us. And if and when you can find those things, awesome. That's the exception rather than the rule. So if you have that, or if you know someone that has that, and we know friends that do this and do it very well, that's fantastic. If you can do it with just dry cleaning only or a certain segment, maybe you just farm out the processing, but your cousin owns a laundromat and really knows how to manage people and is very hands-on. There's exceptions to everything. What we're doing is we're kind of backing out and give you that macro view of the supply chain and saying when we see people that aren't thriving, and by the way, that doesn't mean you're failing. You're just not thriving with pickup and delivery. This is one of the most common things we see. Number 7, controlling the supply chain. Are there exceptions? 100% there are exceptions. But they are exceptions rather than the rule, by the way.
Yeah, I think a big thing is kind of with the dry cleaners is if you are going to use someone else for any element of that supply chain, you vet them. You know who you're dealing with.
All right, so now we're going to move on to number 6. Number 6 reason that your pickup and delivery business may not be thriving is you're not using software technology. Now, we are not here to promote a particular product or service or whatever. There's a lot of great options out there. A lot of these companies are our friends and things like that. It's not a secret that we use Sense here in Cincinnati as of the recording of this episode. But here's the fact of the matter. I hear all the time people say things like, oh, it's $100 a month, it's $300 a month. And I get it, that is a substantial amount of money, especially over the course of a few years. But what I don't think people understand is we launched drop-off, not pickup and delivery, but drop-off without a software suite, a POS. And could it be done? Yes, it can be done. We've done it. But when we picked up a POS, that POS more than paid for itself almost immediately. Now, the basis for that was why we did what we did with pickup and delivery. When we launched pickup and delivery from day one, we had a software suite that we used to manage our customer database, to manage the interactions and the notifications and things like that. A good software suite, regardless of which one you use, will pay for itself even in the very beginning, because what it'll allow you to do is it'll allow you to get from that launch phase to that scale phase much quicker, because you're going to seem like a much more legitimate organization because, quite frankly, you are. You're more professionally run. And a big part of it, Carla talked about trust. If you're using, cell phone, dry erase marker and dry erase board and things like that, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to continuously communicate with the customer. These software suites that are out there, they sign up for a pickup, they get an automatic notification the night before, notification day of, notification when we're on our way, notification we picked up the laundry, notification when we're processing laundry, notification we bring it back. That trust factor is a big part of that. And these software
saves all
suites,
their preferences.
Oh my gosh.
all their preferences are on there.
Their
payments, they don't have to put them in.
Automatic payments. Yeah. It's absolutely fantastic. So that's just from the customer experience. But then there's the in-house side. There's a ton of benefits for you and your organization. Once again, if you want to launch a very small pickup and delivery business, couple miles from your store in a small town in Arkansas and use your personal vehicle and never be any more than that, have at it. You may not need a software suite. But in a day and age where we can get this for a few $100s and we have plenty of options out there, it's really something you should consider. It will more than pay for itself. I'm 100% confident in that.
All right. So number 5, why we see pickup and delivery operations not thrive is that they do not have professionally branded cargo vans. And professional drivers. Now, I'm going to take this from a twofold approach. One is from the customer perspective. Like we talked about before, a lot of times they don't have a face to your company, but one case they might, and that is your driver. With pickup and delivery, if they do see a person, the only person they see is your driver that's picking it up from them and delivering it back to them. So it's important that you have a driver with good people skills, that is polite, professional, and even dressed professionally. They look like they go with a company. It's all part of building that trust with them. You want to appear to be a professional organization. And that goes with your vehicle as well. You don't want them pulling up in some rickety old car that they have or a personal vehicle in bad shape. You want to look like a professional service they can trust. Now, that's from the customer side. The other side of it is those vans are basically a rolling billboard advertising your services. So, as it's driving all over Cincinnati for us, it's advertising all over Cincinnati for us as well. And if you don't put your logo, your brand, if you don't advertise on that, it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not going to spend a ton of time on this. One thing I will tell you is I've heard people kind of try to squish this and say, yeah, but in the same token, Dave, you'll tell us that you don't see most of your customers. 90% of the time, you don't see your customers. There's some truth to that, but let me tell you something. They are looking out their home office window. They do see the driver picking up the laundry. There is psychology, maybe subconscious, but there is psychology. And if not that, they're getting a notification from their Ring doorbell, and they're pulling that up.
They see a picture of them on that.
They're seeing a person in a branded vehicle in a branded company coat with a logo of Queen City Laundry on it. That's clean cut in appearance, and they hit the talk button on the Ring doorbell and say, "How are you doing today, Jeff?" Because they saw Jeff last week. And those things do matter, especially when it comes to the scaling phase. Those things are very important. I don't think we need to cover any more than that, but just remember that even though we don't interact with our customers in a stereotypical retail way, communication and technology allows us to communicate with them and see them. If you got, think about it, if you've ever had that truck pull up, and I know it's becoming more common, Amazon driver pulls up in a hoopty and they're dropping off a package and you're like, who is this weird person pulling in my driveway at 8 o'clock at night? And all of a sudden it feels a little sketchy, and then, they're dropping off a package. That's a pretty different experience than a FedEx truck driving up, right? Even if you don't think it is, there is that reverse psychology associated with it. And you are quantifying those things. You're thinking about those things when it comes to who you do business with. So just keep that in mind. All right. We're going to move on to number 4. Number 4 is a lack of professional customer service. Okay. Carla hit on no phone support. It is so common nowadays for companies to have these AI chats and to email only. And by the way, I'm a fan of these tools. I think they help a lot. We have an offsite receptionist here in Cincinnati who does speak, their team speaks English. They're not overseas, so they're not difficult to understand. But all they do is essentially screen the process, the most common 10, 15 questions that we get over and over again. They screen those calls out for us so that we can spend time with people that need it. But they will transfer those calls to an internal W-2 member of our leadership team right in our facility. And that is very, very valuable. Another aspect of customer service is, okay, how do you do it? Phone support, chat support, email support, different things like that. Then regardless of technology, who's behind that? Those are the 2 things I just talked about. Then the last one is, who's in charge of quality control? If you're not providing professional customer service, whether you're outsourcing it to someone else, part of the supply chain we talked about, or you're doing it in-house, you're just hiding behind technology and not providing phone support because you don't want to hear about complaints and things like that, this all goes back to that being scalable and uncompetable. It's really important that you keep it in-house. We don't have a ton of time to dive into exactly how we do it, but I think you get the basis of it. To give you an idea, we provide customer service at a pretty high level for our facility in Cincinnati. We have about 2,500 to 3,000 employees. Customers in our customers in our database right now. We serve anywhere from 500 to 700 of them a week. And, we're not perfect. We have good operations, but we're not perfect. We make mistakes. And the fact of the matter is our cost for customer service to provide amazing customer service in-house. It costs us a few $100s a month.
All right. So number 3 reason that
Getting
pickup and
down to the
delivery
big ones.
services fail to thrive is a lack of documenting processes. And this really goes towards the consistency. You really need to develop a consistent product that your customers can trust will come back to them in the manner that they requested. And without having your procedures clearly documented so that everyone in your organization, anyone who is doing anything with that laundry knows exactly how it needs to be done, you can't have a consistent product.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing. You have to document these things, but sometimes we're intimidated by that. They don't have to be. I mean, they can be documented on a Word document. This is this operating procedure. This is this operating procedure dropped in a Google Drive that anybody can access at any point. They can be dropped in that Google Drive and printed out and stapled into a binder that you keep in the store that anybody can flip through. Yes, you can take it a step further and create internal videos that maybe aren't professional or just done with your phone, but nobody's going to see them outside the organization, and they allow for those processes to be documented. One of the most common things that happen in the launch phase of pickup and delivery is you're creating processes. Realize I haven't documented everything. Everything's in my head. And it's even more magnified when the owner of the business, which is very common, the owner of the business starts out working every day as the operator, and then they never remove themselves from the business. So, hey, it's my business. It's in my head. That's all we need. Let's go. We got laundry to do.
Yeah.
That's part of creating processes and procedures that are scalable, is stopping and taking the time to document these things. And if you ever want to slowly but surely back out of the business as the owner of the business and have another operator step in, whether it's a partner, an employee that you promote to a general manager position like we've done, building a team, whatever that looks like, these things have to be documented so that they know what you want them to do. And of course, anytime that somebody doesn't follow those, you pull it out and you go, look, in training, you were explained this is how we do things here. You don't do things your way. We do them this way. And by the way, you will find that those rock star employees that we're all looking for, they actually love that. Because that feels like a real business to them versus, I don't know, go talk to Dave, right? It's part of being scalable. It's part of getting through that second phase.
All right. So now number 2, the number 2 reason that pickup and delivery services fail to be successful. Dave talks about this one all the time. Undercharging for their services. And I think a lot of this comes from not keeping track of the costs. If you truly figured in all of the costs of doing that laundry, I'm talking about the person, your attendant that is processing that laundry, however much time they spend, their wages, and the taxes on those wages, by the way, not just the wages, workers' comp, all that is a cost of that order. The wear and tear on your machines, the utilities, yes, the driver, yes, the gas, yes, the wear and tear on the vehicle. If you truly, the supplies that went into it, the detergent, the marketing, the advertising for your service, the software, the customer service you use, all of that is a cost of that pickup and delivery service. And if you are truly keeping track of all the costs, you would not charge that price that perhaps you're charging.
Yeah.
Yes, we charge a premium, but it's a premium service. And if you're not going to charge enough that you can cover those costs and a profit for yourself, you may as well not do it.
Yeah. Well, and then there's the other side of the equation too, which is, reverse engineering and saying, okay, these are all my costs, and then this is what it needs. But then there's the other side of the table, which is looking at it from a customer perspective. And I don't have the numbers in front of me. I didn't put this on our notes, but the average customer spends about 10 hours a week doing laundry, a family of 4. And what are they willing to pay for that? In most cases, if you're charging anywhere from $2 to $2.50 to $3 a pound, the cost of them sending out their laundry service and buying back 10 hours of their life is typically around $10 to $12 to $13 an hour. So can everyone afford to spend 10 hours a week buying back 10 hours of their time? to not ever have to do laundry? Well, the answer is no. But we all know that pretty much any family that's upper middle class or above, and even a lot of middle class, especially single, young marrieds and singles without kids and things like that, they can afford to do that too. So if you're charging $220, and I'm making these numbers up, but if you're charging $220 a pound and you raise it to $240 a pound, look at what does that do to their hour, the cost to them of buyback an hour of their time. Because it probably changes it from like $12 an hour to $13 an hour. Do you really think they care? These are typically professionals making $30, $40, $50, $80, $100, $200, $300 an hour in most cases.
And it might be that they care, but not enough to give up that service that they're really getting used to.
Well, don't get me wrong. Everybody wants an amazing service with great customer service and all these things at the cheapest price possible. I'm not suggesting they want to waste money. But the point is, you have to remember that if it's worth 10, it's worth 12. And
in most cases.
And of course, there's going to be a tipping point. But all I'm really getting at is from a simplistic approach, I think we don't look at it from the customer's perspective and what our ideal avatar, our ideal customer, what is it worth to them to buy back an hour of their time? My point is that I think it's important to understand that if you're going to run a business, as Carla mentioned, reverse engineers, know your expenses, make sure you're making a profit. Otherwise, what are we doing? What are we here for? And then the other side is when you arrive at that number, don't be so quick to just think I can't charge X. We charge $249 a pound for pickup and delivery in Cincinnati, have been for the last 12 to 18 months, and we're going to go up to $279 a pound in the next probably 4 to 6 months after the first of the year. You're probably not going to lose near as many customers as you think because the ideal avatar for pickup and delivery isn't as price sensitive as you think. Now, what we're not suggesting in all this is price gouging or trying to make, nobody's trying to get rich off of one customer. We're trying to get rich off of a whole bunch of customers over a very long period of time. And if you solve problems for them and buy back time and build an amazing team and do the things we talked about, you deserve that, quite frankly.
Just know your costs and make sure you're making a profit.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're on to number one. One of my favorite things to talk about. In my opinion, this is probably one of the most common mistakes that people make that don't allow their pickup and delivery businesses to thrive. And it is agreeing to and partnering with revenue sharing companies. Now listen, some of these people are my friends, okay? I know some of these people very well. They're not bad people. I'm not here to suggest that. But I'm also not going to hide behind the back that this platform, the Laundromat Millionaire platform, what we do as an organization, me and Carla's mission and passion is not to make a whole bunch of money for a bunch of really big companies. That's not our passion. Right? Now, if they do that, that's great. But we believe they should do that in servitude to the community, just like you and I should. We believe that their community, these companies that provide software and do franchises and different things, their community is us, the operator. It's kind of like a distributor. I want my distributor to get filthy, stinking rich by serving me really well and supporting me in a way where I will never go anywhere else. If a revenue share partnership works and is a win-win for both parties and these companies make all kinds of money, that's great. But if we look at like the Washios of the world and these type of companies, that's not what's happening. So I have a unique perspective. This is not here to talk about a specific company. We all know there's a bunch of revenue sharing companies out there. But the truth is, if you look at them, and I happen to have intimate knowledge of most of these things, you're going to see a bunch of really consistent things. And so one of the most consistent things that I see when laundry pickup and delivery operators, which is you and I, right? That's what we're here to talk about, is you and I as boots on the ground operators aren't thriving with pickup and delivery. It's because they're in a revenue sharing agreement. So let's take a look at what that looks like.
First, I've got to address the elephant in the room here.
How about it? I'm an open book.
I know some of you are thinking, Dave, you used to really support a revenue share model.
Yep.
So why not anymore?
Yep, absolutely. 100% true. That's why I love this woman. That's why I asked her to be on the show with me. I want her to be the voice of reason so that I don't overlook things. The fact of the matter is, she's talking about happiness. Let's just say it. But that's not what this number one is about. It's not about happiness. It's about your side of the aisle within a revenue sharing agreement. But let's be very clear. She's exactly right. A couple of years ago, I was a big advocate for happiness. I was a partner. I was one of the founding members, very minority share. And I was a big advocate for that. It's very simple. At that point, I believed that us independent operators could launch, scale, and optimize bigger and more quickly by partnering with these companies. Okay. Now, what's happened since then is you fast forward 3 years and all of a sudden I have all kinds of new information. I have all kinds of new data. I have a completely different perspective, haven't lived in that world as an independent operator and as a partner, as a part owner in the company. And part of the reason that I left that agreement is because I looked at it and said, this is not a win-win. And there wasn't a scenario where it would be a win-win. Now, let me be clear. If you're in a revenue sharing agreement and you're tickled pink and you love it and you're making 30 to 40% margins, which is what you should be making if you're doing pickup and delivery, then by all means, completely ignore everything I'm about to say. But I have a unique perspective, having coached a bunch of people inside and out of. And so I just want to bring the truth to the table. And I want to show us independent operators why this may not be in our best interest. I don't have an agenda. I'm just here to share information. And one of the things I asked Carla to do specifically on number 1 is to just pick this puppy apart. So the truth is, why did I used to advocate for these revenue sharing agreements? And why do I no longer? It's very simple. I have new information. Because at one point, yes, I believed one thing and I believed it passionately. I really did. And then I got new information that I gathered over the course of several years. Part of that unique proposition is being an independent operator.
Yeah.
Because we are you. We are boots on the ground. We are running a pickup and delivery business. And so I could look at it from the owner's perspective. And what it really boiled down to is that the quick epiphany, Carla, for me with this was, I'm 4 or 5 years into this at that point. I look at it and I say, you know what? I'm not in a revenue sharing agreement. I'm still an independent operator, correct? But I can look at the economics and say, but if we were, even though we've built a well-oiled machine and we have an amazing team and an amazing business and an amazing model and all these differentiators, if I were to do a revenue sharing agreement similar to that economic structure, we wouldn't make any money. I mean, we'd make about 5%. I think versus 35%.
I think a key word there in this is revenue sharing. Notice it's not profit sharing. So when you're in a revenue sharing model, they're taking off of your top number, whether you're being profitable or not. So, revenue is at the top, all the money coming in, they're taking a portion of that. You have the rest to pay for all the expenses. And what happens is a lot of times there's no profit left over.
Well, the other side, and we're going to go through some detailed explanation here, but the other side of it too is you lack control. Like depending on your revenue sharing agreement, and make sure you read your agreement, have an attorney read it, pick it apart, devil's advocate type of situation. Every revenue sharing agreement I've ever seen, and this is not just through one company, but I've been coaching people for a while on this now. Every revenue sharing agreement I've seen is drawn up and written by the partner company, the corporate company. And 100% of the time, it is written 100% in their favor. And what I've learned, and this is just, once again, anecdotal, not saying anything specific about a certain company, but what I've learned about this is that a lot of these companies write them in that way, knowing that this allows them to scale and be more profitable over time. And we'll talk about this, but not necessarily the independent operator. Now, in my opinion, I think that's pretty short-sighted. Like if I were to launch, and we're not, by the way, but if I were to launch a revenue sharing partnership and I were to be that big corporate company, the first thing I would do personally is I would look at it and say, I want to create an economic structure where, yes, we bring value to the table, we make money, you bring value to the table, you make money, and it is an equitable partnership. Now, I do believe that most, if not all, of these revenue sharing companies believe that's the case. And I'm here to tell you, as someone that's been boots on the ground, that's been on both sides of the table for multiple years, has been doing laundry pickup and delivery, I've never seen a revenue sharing agreement that is fair and equitable for both sides. It has to be a win-win.
Okay, so let's get into it. Why is it, so I already mentioned the fact that they're taking the revenue, none of the costs, so you may not have any profits. But what are the reasons that you feel a revenue sharing model makes it hard to have a successful pickup and delivery business?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I want to say is there is an exception, and I love the exception, so I always like to throw those out first. There is an exception where it makes sense. It's very one specific thing. It's very minute, but it could apply to you. So let me just throw this out there and get it out of the way. If you're a laundromat owner-operator, you do drop-off laundry. You have no interest in doing pickup and delivery at scale, meaning that's not something that interests you at all. And you have excess capacity in your store and in your labor structure. So you have attendants, you want to be fully attended, you're paying them to be fully attended no matter what within your structure. And they have maybe 16 hours a day of payroll. And maybe 6 of those they're cleaning and the other 10 they're sitting around, but you want them there. You wish your store would grow busy enough to keep them busy, but it's not, and not probably going to be anytime soon. In that situation, a very isolated situation, a revenue share agreement could make sense because basically what you're doing is you're tapping into what I call free labor, free payroll, okay? They're already accounted for within the business structure. And so if you're going to do 70-20, 75 or 70-30, 75-25 split, 50-50 split, whatever it looks like, you're still going to make money because your labor costs are basically zero. You're just tapping into that excess capacity. Now, it's no secret that if you do that, you're going to outgrow it really quickly. So the point is this isn't a scalable model, but it can be a very unique thing.
Also, so if you have these employees that basically just, have this extra time, wouldn't it still be better for you to do pickup and delivery, but keep all the revenue? Like, I guess I don't know. What is the revenue sharing business bringing to the table?
Well, once again, it depends on the model, but there are some models of revenue sharing agreements out there where they go pick up the laundry. You don't actually pick up the laundry.
Oh, okay.
And they bring
find
it to
the customers.
You. They find the customers. Okay. They go pick up the laundry. They drop it off to your store. They drop off 30 bags of laundry. You do it at 70 cents on the pound versus what you would normally do. But because you're tapping into that free labor, that free payroll, it's still very equitable for you. Like it's still very profitable for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's why I say it's on a very small scale. You're exactly right.
They're basically doing everything of the pickup and delivery operation except for processing the laundry.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Okay.
So that's why I say let's not put all revenue sharing agreements into the same category. There's the Washios, which you can study that story, but they went bankrupt after raising $20 million. There's a million of them out there. And all I'm saying is if what you're trying to do is solve a very small problem, meaning I'm paying this person, I want them there to serve my customers, but there's all this excess capacity and I'm going to pay them no matter what. So if I can bring in 70 cents on the dollar, then that's basically almost all profit.
Yeah.
Right?
No, that makes sense now.
So that is
I didn't realize that they would do everything but the processing, I guess.
Yep, there are situations like that for sure.
So that was the one caveat of where revenue share might be okay. So what are the reasons that revenue share does prohibit us from being successful?
Yeah, so there's several of them, and you're going to notice some of the things we're kind of tapping into again of things we talked about in the first 9. But it's why I think this is honestly just not a good situation for almost all independent operators. One of them is you're building someone else's brand. Okay? You're not building your brand, you're building their brand. Now, if you're okay with that, once again, that's fine. All we want to do is kind of dissect and pull out and take a look at what does this look like from your perspective. See, we're not interested in them. We're interested in us.
That is if they make you use their brand. I guess not all of them do.
100% accurate. That's why I'm saying not every one of them are different. It's why I say we're not here to talk about happiness, okay? We're here to talk about all these companies. It's why I put a category of revenue sharing agreements together. And by the way, most franchises aren't revenue sharing agreements. So I kind of put them in a category of their own as well, by the way. But yeah, assuming that you're either not building a brand at all, or you're building someone else's brand. But one thing you're not doing is building your own brand. This is assuming that you want to launch, scale, and optimize pickup and delivery, that you want to do this and do this at a substantial level. Now, a substantial level could be $100,000 a year. It doesn't need to be 10 million. It could be 10 million too. But if you're going to do 100,000 a year or 10 million, you're going to build a brand no matter what. You build a brand for yourself, which has value, and by the way, you have control over. And we're going to talk about some of those things.
Yeah, like
or you
if
build
it's
a
not
brand
your
for
brand,
somebody else.
can you sell that business? I don't know.
Great point. Absolutely great point. All right, so another one is when you do these, you are almost always, and there's once again exceptions to everything, you're almost always outsourcing customer service. We talked about earlier, that's one of the biggest mistakes that independent operators make. It
could be great. If they offer great customer service. But do you trust that? And do you trust that it'll stay that way if it is good?
And then the last thing I want to throw out there is the accountability. This is what I actually have a big problem with. When I look at these revenue sharing agreements from the perspective of an independent operator, what accountability do you have? And let me give you an example. Let's say you sign a revenue sharing agreement and it says that the partner, the corporate company, will provide customer service. They'll do all the customer service. You don't have to do any of the customer service. And they'll do all the marketing. And they'll handle all the technology, okay? Let's assume
Is that all it says?
Well, that's my point, right? You're picking up what I'm laying down here, as they say. That's my point. And this is something I didn't know. Like, I had to go through the School of Hard Knocks and learn this and go, wait a second, like, what if you're not providing good customer service? Because I think what us as an independent small business owner would go in thinking, oh my gosh, if you took all that off my plate and did an amazing job, because we talked about how important it is, if you took all that off my plate with marketing wise and did an amazing job, and if I was helping you build a brand, right? So marketing, for example, let's sign an agreement. They say I get 50% of the revenue or 10% of the revenue, and we do all the customer service. That is typically, go look at these agreements for all the companies. That's typically all it says. It basically says we can do whatever in the world we want to do.
It doesn't say we will get back to your customers within the week and they can only reach a chat bot,
Right.
Or, we guarantee, it should say, we guarantee every call is answered by a person trained. And, what is the quality of customer service? What does that customer service looks like? What's the response time? Those kind of things.
You have no control over quality. You have no control over reliability. You have no control over messaging. You have no control over crediting, whether someone gets accredited or doesn't. You have no control over the person on the phone, assuming they're on the phone. What about the tone of their voice? What if they're being just rude? They're technically answering the phone. They're just being rude. Well, let me tell you what happens when that's a member of your leadership team here in Cincinnati. You go fix it. Right? That's a part of the supply chain. You talked about that. The customer service is a part of the supply chain. You go fix it. You have the ability to do so. You have control over those things. And by the way, this is not a control thing. This is just an accountability thing. Because see, when you outsource these things, whether you outsource one independent thing, let's forget revenue sharing for agreement and just say you just outsource customer service and you hire a company that does, there's call centers out there you can hire and they don't transfer calls. They don't forward them to you. They handle all of it 100%. Let me tell you what you have if they don't do their job to the level that you think they should. You fire them. And you go find another call center and you bring them in and you say, the last company I stopped using because they weren't providing the level of quality customer service that I think is important and necessary that makes me uncompetable in my market. When you're in a revenue sharing agreement, let me tell you how that goes. Shut up, sit down, and go do the laundry. That's how that works. Okay.
Hopefully not exactly like that, but maybe. Yeah. And to that, the marketing, same type of thing. When they say, we will cover all of your marketing, that's not saying how many dollars per month are you going to spend on Google AdWords in my area? How many dollars per month on Facebook ads? It doesn't say anything. It just says we'll cover your marketing. That could be $5 a month.
It could be
you don't
zero.
know.
Technically, if you have a revenue sharing agreement and it says that the corporate company will provide marketing for that brand in your market and no other caveats, that could be something as simple as we put up the website with Dave's Laundry on it, and that has organic search engine optimization.
There you go. There's your marketing.
A perfect example is if you want to or already in an agreement like this, don't get offended. We're not here to attack you. We're here to help. If you want to stay in that agreement, let me tell you what you do. The next time this agreement comes up for renewal, which they typically have a 1, 2, 3 year renewal, you sit down and lay out all the parameters of what you require within that revenue sharing agreement. That if they're taking 50% of the revenue, that they're spending 5% on local ad spend in your territory, in your market, in pay-per-click ads, utilizing a platform of either Google AdWords, Facebook, or Instagram.
Make it very specific.
Very clear. 5%. As it grows, 5% of that 50% they get is in your local market. Let me tell you what's going to happen if you do that. You will not have a revenue sharing partnership. It won't exist because they don't want that accountability. See, in their minds, and this is a collective statement, but in their minds, you work for them. They call the shots. They call the messaging. They decide how much is spent. They do all these things and you have no control. They decide whether you talk to a chatbot, whether you speak to an English person, or whether you speak to anybody at all. They decide what those things look like.
Another biggie downer with revenue sharing, and this isn't with all of them, but do you own your customers?
Yep.
And this kind of speaks to what I mentioned earlier about if eventually you decide to get out of this business, what value does it have? Can you sell it to somebody if you don't own the customers, you don't own the brand? I mean, think about these things. Have you really created anything? If you decide to leave the revenue sharing model and go out on your own, can you take your customers with you?
Yep. And once again, I would use this in the same category as the marketing. If the other side of the table, your partners in revenue sharing, if they're, watching this video and getting upset, or you're going to them with these positions and they get upset, it's very simple. Hey, if you owning the customers isn't really that big of a deal, tell you what, how about we change the agreement so it states that we own the customers? See how they react to that. At the end of the day, what we're really trying to get out to you is not to attack revenue sharing agreements. It's to bring to the forefront how this looks to an independent operator who's maybe never considered these things. So once again, go to your partner. If you're in an agreement or considering being in an agreement, go to them and say, what if we changed you just do marketing to very specific 6 paragraphs my attorney drew up, and this is what you're required to do. All you have to do is look at their reaction, and it will tell you what their intentions are as a business. The same thing applies to the ad spends and the customer service. And, well, how do I hold you accountable? And they're like, well, it's our brand too. We don't want to provide bad customer service. Says who? Like, that may sound really good in theory, but we all know millions and millions of companies who provide bad customer service. So let's not just assume that providing great customer service is important. And maybe your idea of great customer service is very different than theirs. And oh, by the way, if it's our customers or their customers, okay, how about if I decide to leave the agreement? I have the right to contact these customers and serve them as Dave's Laundry versus ABC Laundry, but you do too. Okay, nobody owns the customers. There's no statement for that, because that's what I hear when we have these conversations on the inside of the organization, on the inside of the industry, and we say, hey, how about us independent operators? Why aren't we taking a voice? Why aren't we saying something about these things? And these big corporate companies, a lot of times that are backed by venture capital and things like that, they immediately want to kind of shout us down and let us know why what Dave said on the podcast is ridiculous and silly. And I always say all along, okay, maybe it is. Okay, great. If it's silly, if Dave is making a mountain out of a molehill for owning the customers, then how about we just take that out and no one owns the customers? Let's take this a step further, Carla. So if I'm sharing a brand, and that's what these companies like to tell us is, oh, it's not our brand, meaning my brand, it's our brand. Me and you are sharing this.
It's going to be a recognizable brand across the country.
Yeah, it's a national corporate brand. We're all in this together, right? We're all building a brand. Let me tell you what happens. If you're going to partner with a network of operators all across the country in a revenue sharing agreement, that may seem like a good thing, but if you're an elite operator, you seek to be an elite operator, or even if you're middle of the road, what happens when you're an operator in Cincinnati and you're, let's say, in the top 25% of the operators under that brand, and someone moves to Cincinnati from Los Angeles, and the operator under that brand in Los Angeles was atrocious, was terrible. The odds of them using your brand are almost zero because they've ruined that for you. They're not going to give you a chance. Now, one of the benefits that these companies will sell to us is the other side is true too. So if somebody moves from Los Angeles to Cincinnati and the operator in Los Angeles was a rock star operator, the odds of you getting that business are really good. But the point is that you don't have control over these things. Now, if you're convinced you're in a revenue sharing agreement with a network of just amazing operators all across the country, they all get together, they have amazing training, everybody's doing things the same way. All the processes and procedures is not just, hey, do it, and if the customer's happy, we're happy. It's we all do it the same way. That's how a franchise typically works and why the good franchises work well. That's powerful, powerful stuff. Okay? What we want you to understand is the one-sided agreements that are out there that are almost exclusive to revenue sharing agreements are not to our benefit. And when you want to have these conversations with these corporate companies, very simply ask them the questions that I've asked. and see if they're negotiable. Hey, if they're negotiable and they're willing to put those parameters in place and say, hey, you can hold us accountable. If our customer service doesn't answer within 20 seconds and they don't speak with a live working English person local in Cincinnati, Ohio, or whatever, then, if that happens more than 4 times in a 30-day period of time, you can get out your agreement and you can take the customers with you because they're not our customers, they're our customers. If they agree to all that, hey, I'll change my opinion on a revenue share. That makes sense? All right. So a couple more things before we end today, and I know we went a little bit long, but this is something that we feel is really important. So let's back out of all this now and look at this from the big picture, and we're still on the revenue sharing screen. Let's look at this from the big picture. There's 3 parts to our business that are scalable. I've been doing this for 6 years, coached hundreds of clients in every market in the country. These are consistent. The 3 parts of the pickup and delivery business that are very scalable and economical are marketing, customer service, and technology. As the company goes from making $3,000 a month to $30,000 a month, the cost of marketing is very scalable, meaning it doesn't change drastically. You spend $300 a month and maybe $500 a month. The rest goes into the corporate company's pocket for their profits. The customer service is very scalable. I know because we do this internally. Let me tell you, there's not a drastic difference in providing customer service to 500 customers in Cincinnati and 5,000 customers in Cincinnati.
It'll increase a little bit, but
the reason is they don't all call. It's a very small percentage of people that, first of all, have an issue. And when they do, how do they reach out? A lot of them have small issues and they don't even reach out at all. So the customer service is very scalable. And then the technology. You talk to any technology company out there, the reason that these companies that you can purchase these software suites to use, the reason they charge me $300 a month to use their software suite, whether I have 10,000 customers and make $10 million a year, or have 10 customers and make $100 a year, is because technology, at the end of the day, they're providing us access to a portal, and how much we use it doesn't really change much. So those are the 3 aspects. This is part of the reason that I say most revenue sharing agreements out there are not win-wins. That's the corporate side, right? That's the side of the equation where we're looking at it and we're saying, okay, as we continue to scale, the revenue sharing doesn't go down from 75-25 to 80-20 and 90-15. That would be fair and equitable. It's okay for that company to make money. Look, at the end of the day, in every revenue sharing agreement I've ever seen, and I've seen most of them out there at pretty quality detail, almost every one of them, there's 2 sides. There's the revenue sharing partnership on the corporate side, which is the 3 things are similar. They provide the bags and whatever. They do all these little things. Okay, that's fine. Those are all very scalable. And then there's the logistics and the processing and the management and the oversight, the training, the people side. And there's nothing scalable about that. Now, there are some little details that we've perfected and learned that help with those things, but they're very minute. They don't scale very well, but there are little aspects. I mean, obviously, it's a little bit more efficient to send out a driver in a van for 5 hours and pick up 500 pounds of laundry than 400 pounds of laundry in the same time. Yes, those are scalable. At the end of the day, the logistics side and the processing side and the management and oversight and training side of the business is what you, the operator, are doing within a revenue sharing agreement. And that side of the business is not very scalable. Where you're going to make your money as you scale a pickup and delivery business as an independent operator without a revenue sharing agreement is on the marketing and on the software. Once again, I pay $300 a month to use Sense, and if I grow a $2 million business, they still get $300 a month.
Yeah. Those costs stay relatively the same, but then the other costs, the processing costs, are what go up with your revenue, basically. So if you think about that from the perspective of the company that you're sharing revenue with, they have very small costs. The more money you make, their profit margin, because they still have the same cost, the more money you make, their profit margin is just growing, because they're not spending any more on your marketing, on your customer service, or on your technology. But on the other hand, you as the operator, as your revenues grow, so do your expenses.
Yep.
And if they're constantly taking, a portion of that revenue, it might be all that's left of you for your profits.
Yep, absolutely. Once again, Not here to tell anybody how to run their business. Just try to bring information from the perspective of you and us, the independent operator. We want you to have this information. If you're happy with your agreement and you're in a revenue sharing agreement, or you're not happy but you go back to the table and renegotiate, have at it. We just want you to be successful. We think that win-win is important. And we're aware that there's some companies out there that aren't going to like that we put out this episode. That's okay. All right, so the last one, and we're out of the revenue sharing conversation now. We've done from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3,
We already did number one. What do you mean the last one?
We did number one, but I have a bonus for you.
Okay.
And it's really just a little bit of inspiration, encouragement if you can. The bonus one is maybe the biggest mistake I see independent operators making in launching, scaling, and optimizing pickup and delivery is not thinking big enough. See, that's why we get stuck in the launch phase. It's why we sign revenue sharing agreements. It's why we agree to partnerships. We either don't think we can build a business like that, or we think it's too much work. And we're here to show you and help you understand that building an independent operations within your local market, with your local brand, your customer service, your own marketing, your own technology, which yes, you can hire a company to provide technology for a few $100 a month. You can hire a company to do digital marketing for you at a professional level for not a whole lot of money. So you can provide that sophistication. You can build your own brand. Then you have an asset that provides cash flow that you could sell independently without any caveats. No one needs any approval. If I want to sell my pickup and delivery business tomorrow, I can do that. I own all the customers and there's no other parties involved throwing wrenches into the plans, okay? But here's the thing I want you to understand. So many people in the pickup and delivery world have launched, and when they hit the scale phase, they backed out. They threw their hands up and they gave up. So many people maybe did that and then decided, oh, that's not as easy as I thought it would be. Maybe I need a revenue share, or maybe I quit altogether and sell my vans. Look, if they've already done these things, I'm probably not going to talk them out of it. And I'm not here to talk anyone out of anything. I just want to share information. But for those that are still in the launch phase or maybe haven't launched yet, I want you to know and understand that this is doable. It is scalable. It's incredibly lucrative. We are an example of that, but we are not an aberration. Yes, we were one of the trailblazers 6, 7, 8 years ago now, and there were trailblazers before us too. There's a couple dozen probably that have really kind of blazed the trail over the last 10 or 15 years. And we all have different models. There's not a right or wrong way to do it. What we want to share with you is that it can be done.
And we'll even teach it to you.
Yep.
In our pickup and delivery workshop. I know. Plugging in there.
Absolute plug. This episode is not about trying to get you to come to our workshop, but by the way, this is why we created the workshop. I mean, we had 13 people come to Cincinnati from our workshop a couple months ago. We have a couple more coming up. Carla will tell you about in a minute. But here's the point. Our workshop, it's not cheap, okay? But we know the value. We understand the value. But here's the beauty. You pay us for the workshop. We provide you with the information, the training, the coaching, the mentorship here in the facility. You go back home. We coach you through that process. We're even available for additional coaching if you want that type of level of service. But the second we stop providing you value, you stop paying us, whether that's in a one-time workshop or in a coaching and mentoring environment. We bring you value and you take it and hopefully 10 or 20 or 30 exit. That's totally different than these revenue sharing agreements or just throwing up your hands and saying, I can't do this on my own. So Carla, tell them about the next workshop.
So our next workshop for pickup and delivery is March 13th and 14th. We originally had it for April, but we had several people saying that was too far out. So we moved it up a little bit. So we hope that you can attend if you're interested in learning how an independent operator like us can be successful with a pickup and delivery business. We run you through all of it. We show you everything behind the scenes and how we do it, how to launch it, how to scale it, and how to optimize it so that you are making profits.
Yeah, so the beauty of the workshop is if you're launching, we can help you a ton because we'll teach you how to launch, scale, and optimize. If you already launched, but you're having trouble figuring out scaling, we'll grab you right there and say, this is how you scale and this is how you optimize. If you've already launched, scaled, and now you're in optimization, Once again, you got a $400,000 business. Hey, if we can improve that by 1%, your ROI over the next 10 years is probably going to be 10 to 20x on that investment of a couple days' time coming to Cincinnati. But at the end of the day, what we hope you get out of this more than anything else is that this is what we're passionate about. This is what Laundromat Millionaire is all about. We're not here to hate on anyone. We don't have anything against any of the revenue sharing agreements that are out there or what have you. All we're trying to do is bring very real information to the table and say, you know what, us laundromat operators, it's time that we stand up for ourselves. It's time that we look at these agreements we're signing and say, hey, is this in my best interest? And if you talk about it with your revenue sharing partner and they say, oh, this is why they are wrong, okay, then are they willing to change those things? So anyway, that biggest mistake we see is just not thinking big enough and not thinking that you can do it on your own, or if it becomes this incredibly complex thing. What we teach in our coaching and in our workshop is actually fairly simple. It's not rocket science. It's a beautiful thing when you build this well-oiled machine. And by the way, the last misnomer I'm going to leave you with today is don't believe for a second that you can't build a multi-million-dollar pickup and delivery business and that it's going to require more work out of you, because Carla and I work less in our business now than we ever have. When you get these revenues and you're not sharing them with a revenue sharing agreement, guess what you can do with that revenue? You can hire a team. You can build a management team, a leadership team, which slowly but surely over time allows you to step out of the business and work on your business rather than working in your business. So I hope that helps you guys out. Thank you for joining us today. We know this went a little bit long, but we hope you get a little bit of value out of that. For the hate mail that's coming, bring it on, guys. We'll see you next time for another episode of the Laundromat Millionaire Show. Take care.
Bye.